Hello and welcome back or welcome to the channel. I'm Loudguns, and in today's episode we're going to be doing a deep dive into the RSI Perseus. After a couple of seconds of teaser in the ISC episode content driven, it seems like the Perseus may be, forgive the pun, on the horizon. And since this is personally one of my most anticipated combat ships, I wanted to put this video together compiling everything I could find on RSI's meaty brawler into one neat package. So if this sounds good to you, then grab a cup of tea while I roll the intro, then let's get into it. Originally commissioned in 2920 by the United Planets of Earth Navy, the RSI Perseus was intended as a frontier patrol gunboat, as what would go on to become the United Empire of Earth expanded its borders. The Perseus was designed to look as nasty as physically possible, instilling fear and often putting down uprisings, such as the incident at Red Ridge, without having to fire a single shot. Since the design predated ship shields, the Perseus was heavily armoured and featured point defence Gatling guns to protect it from enemy missiles, while its giant cannons allowed this relatively small ship to punch above its weight. Historically, the original Perseuses came into their own during humanity's Cold War with the Xi'an Empire, stalking the Peri Line and containing Xi'an probes into human space. However, obsolescence loomed as the new Aegis Idris entered service and generally superseded it in this role. RSI shuttered the original Perseus program in the 2860s. However, in 2946 during the Vandal War, the UES Achilles was deployed as part of Operation Mandrake. Despite its diminutive size, the aging Perseus managed to take out 2 Vandal destroyers before ultimately being damaged beyond repair. And as a result, Admiral Bishop personally requested that RSI re-engineer a modern Perseus for use in the fight against the Vandal. At 100 meters long, 50 meters wide, and 21 meters high, the modern Perseus is actually a relatively compact ship, and as a result the crew requirement of 6 is nowhere near as high as you'll find elsewhere in Star Citizen. You can best see the size relative to the Hammerhead, which we have available to us in game now, and note how it is decidedly smaller than either its big brother the RSI Polaris, or indeed the Aegis Idris. A massive thank you to Starjump for their fantastic Fleet Viewer tool, which allows us to really picture these ships relative to one another. If you haven't tried it out already, I'll include a link to the site in the video description, so do go and have a play. The ship's profile is decidedly shark inspired, part of the reason this is one of my favourite concepts. From the outside we can see the 2 main gun turrets mounted to the bow on the top side and stern on the bottom. While the rear turret is unimpeded, the top turret's arc of fire would be blocked to the rear by the bridge, so if you want to deliver maximum DPS, you're going to have to be pointing at your target. Maybe not one for the Cowardly Lions. Thankfully, the main turrets allow the Perseus to punch decidedly above its weight, with twin size 7 bespoke ballistic cannons on both, giving the ship a total of 4 massive guns. In the Q&A, CIG confirmed that there would be a variety of different ammunition types for the Perseus to allow it to take on different challenges. I just hope that given their all-ballistic nature, and our current experience of this with the Polaris, that the ability to stock spare ammo on board and reload isn't too far away. It also has 2 remote point defence turrets, with far better fields of fire, equipped with dual-size 3 Gatling guns. As per the Q&A, these turrets are designed to be automated, and when AI blades are released as a feature, should come stock with these equipped to shoot down incoming missiles and torpedoes. The Perseus can also dole out its own torpedoes, carrying a payload of 20 size 5s. These obviously aren't the same level of threat posed by the size 11s on the Polaris, but should still give large enemy ships something to think about, and allow the Perseus to engage from even longer range than its guns would allow. In terms of components, the Perseus was last listed with medium-sized radar, 2 medium computers, 2 large power plants, coolers and shield generators, and large QT drive and jump module. That being said, these details are now quite old, and CIG have refactored ship components quite widely since they were published, so the actual components we get when the ship is released could differ significantly. Internally, the Perseus is split over 3 decks: the orlop deck, the gun deck, and the bridge. Starting at the bottom, we have the orlop deck, a term meaning the lowest of at least 3 decks on a wooden sailing ship. This derives from the Dutch overloop or overlopen. Thank you Wikipedia, and apologies to anyone who's Dutch who might want to correct me on my pronunciation there. Here you can enter via the docking collar on the left hand side of the cargo bay, and this space has a cargo grid for up to 50 SCU, and is spacious enough for ground vehicles like the RSI Ursa rover. In the Q&A it was confirmed that as well as the ramp up to the cargo bay, there will also be a personnel entrance. Down in the lower decks we also have access to the lower manned turret. Heading up to the gun deck, you'll find the crew quarters, with separate quarters for the captain and a mess hall where you can sit around and discuss all the things you've blown up today. In the forward section, which you can access via a gangway over the cargo hold, you'll find the torpedo bay housing the explosive payload, and to the very front is the access to the upper turret. The gun deck is the largest of the decks, and just looking at this cutaway, I think it really shows just how heavily armoured the Perseus is, with a thick layer of hull between you and the outside world. Finally at the top we've got the bridge deck. The bridge is one of the key selling points of the Perseus for me. While I appreciate that from a purely practical standpoint having the pilot seated towards the nose does make sense, the naval vibes you get from a top-mounted bridge set more towards the rear of the hull make it far more immersive, and I think they give you an appreciation of the scale of the ships that you're flying. Engineering is housed to the rear of the bridge deck, and I do really like this feature as well. Most engineering stations are down in the bows of the ship, but for a vessel with a relatively small crew, I think it's cool that you're not overly spread out with the exception of your gunners. The primary reason I like to make videos like this, diving into concept designs and ships as they're released, isn't to make calls on whether you should part with real world cash to buy them. I never like telling anyone how to spend their money. You earned it, inherited it, or found a mysterious bag of cash in the woods. However you got it, you do you. Instead, I'm primarily focused on how these ships will be utilised when we have the opportunity to buy, and as is now confirmed, build them in the game in the future. Theory crafting about how they should interact and synergise with one another, and what their strengths and weaknesses within a fleet might be. Of course, Perseuses, or Persei, I'm not quite sure what the plural is here, but I'm sure somebody will tell me, will likely form a high DPS threat within large fleets. Acting as vanguard ships capable of soaking incoming damage thanks to their heavy armour, while outputting significantly more than their size implies, targeting larger enemy vessels such as corvettes and capital ships. However, do keep in mind that the Perseus is going to be really vulnerable to smaller enemy ships like heavy and medium fighters, so you'll need to build your fleet composition to compensate for their weaknesses. However, I'm more interested to see how the Perseus could be used in wolf packs, raiding behind the front lines. Outside of static fortifications like starbases, war between player organisations is likely to be fluid given the three-dimensional nature of space warfare. And getting in to raid enemy supply lines with a small fleet of maybe 2 Perseus and a hammerhead, just to provide that anti-fighter cover, would be a total nightmare for large cargo haulers like the Hull series or refuelers like the Starfarer. After a few losses to wolf packs, your enemies would surely have to dedicate more of their resources to escorting their convoys, leaving them with less of a force to meet your main fleets with. If this fleet warfare aspect of Star Citizen does interest you, then please do head on over to our Discord via the link in the video description. Amongst other things, our org has a number of combat wings who are chomping at the bit for the Perseus, having already got stuck in with wild abandon to the Polaris, and when they could get their hands on one and Idris. And a big part of what we aim to do is just to give people a taste of what multi-crew gameplay has to offer in Star Citizen, because once you've had that first hit, you do tend to want more. So hopefully, given the little teasers at SitCon and inside Star Citizen, we won't have all that long to wait for the RSI Perseus. I feel I'm tempting fate whenever I make guesstimates in SC, but if I were a betting man, my money would be on this year's Invictus launch week in May, since I can't think of a better centrepiece for the military-themed in-game show. Do let me know what you think down in the comments though. Is the Perseus also on your wish list, or do you find it dull? I'm always keen to hear other people's thoughts, particularly when they give me the hows and the whys. With all that being said, I just want to say thank you very much for watching all the way to the end, and I look forward to seeing you next time.